Was the year 1990.
Okay, so last time I went through some of the biggest movies of 1990. Now it is the turn of the animated shows. This list is not quite as exhaustive as the movies list, but there are some great cartoons on here which really tapped into my memory banks, as I've not seen a lot of these since I was young. Anyway, enough talk, let's get on with the show and the animated cartoons from the year 1990. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Foster as Bill, Keanu Reeves as Ted, and the late legendary stand-up comedian George Carlin as Rufus. This was just for the first season. They were replaced in the second season by actors Evan Richards and Christopher Kennedy. Kennedy and Richards went on to portray Bill and Ted in the short-lived 92 live-action show. Bill and Ted was part of a list of animated shows that were adapted from the big screen onto the small screen in animated features. These included like Police Academy, RoboCop, Rambo, and the like. The tone of the show was mostly campy and goofy, with some serious elements to it. There was one particular episode that I remember which was entitled When the Going Gets Tough, Bill and Ted Are History. In this episode, Bill and Ted give up their dream of being musicians, which unfortunately disrupts time, and as a result, Rufus slowly begins to de-age until he becomes a young infant. Bill and Ted must meet 4 historical figures and ensure that they accomplish their historical goals in order to fix the timeline and restore Rufus back to his adult age. Now this episode was recorded on VHS along with other cartoons that I had back when I was a kid, and back then it was what you could catch on TV and record, unlike today when shows are freely available on DVD box sets or streaming services. This episode I must have watched over and over many times because it's very fresh in my memory, and that's why I've been able to jog it. Now I don't remember watching many of the other episodes, but it was at an age where I did like most cartoons, but I was reaching an age where I began to develop specific taste for certain shows. From what I could remember outside this episode, it was a show that was just there. There wasn't much. Captain Planet and the Planeteers. A new superhero had emerged at the turn of the century and was a hero like no other. The show revolved around 5 teenagers called the Planeteers. They are given 5 magic rings by the spirit of the earth, Gaia. The rings control the elements of the earth: earth, fire, wind, water, and heart. In situations that the Planeteers cannot resolve by themselves, the group combine their powers and summon the one and the only Captain Planet, out to defend Earth from the polluting forces of evil. Cap is Marty's magnified heart power in the form of a superhero avatar with blue skin and green hair. He has all the Planeteer's amplified powers along with the ability to fly and possesses superhuman strength. He was vulnerable to deadly forms of pollution and smog which weakened him. It was like his version of kryptonite. The show was very environment orientated, and throughout the run of the show there were life lessons on environmental and social political issues which came at the end of each episode. These were known as Planeteer Alerts. The show was created by multi-billionaire mogul Ted Turner and Barbara Pyle. The show, whilst not overly heavy on the violence, was action orientated with doses of thriller and suspense, very much geared to a kid-friendly audience. It came about at a time when the Ninja Turtles were dominating the genre, but kids' tastes were changing, and Cap coming along saw the focus shift onto him. Captain Planet ran for a total of 113 episodes over 6 seasons. The first 3 seasons were produced by DIC Enterprises. Seasons 4 to 6 was produced by Hanna-Barbera Cartoons, so you saw the very obvious change in animation style and tone when compared to the earlier seasons. This, I feel, made the show a bit too kid-friendly, and it had lost the edge and resembled something of a Looney Tunes style TV show. The voice cast had a lineup of industry veterans and big names from the world of TV and film. David Coburn was the voice of Captain Planet, and looking at his resume, his more well-known role outside of this was his appearances on Sister Sister, the first and the last episode. He portrays Cap as stoic but with a light sense of humour. LeVar Burton of Star Trek The Next Generation fame voiced Kwame, the African teenager who was the leader of the group. He has the power of the earth in his power ring and is the calm, level-headed member of the group. Though he is built from Africa, the research suggests that he's actually from Ghana. Joey Dedio, who was the voice of Wheeler, the brash, cocky, outgoing member of the group, and he had the power of fire. Veteran voice actress Kathy Susi voiced Linka, the girl from what was then known as the Soviet Union, now just Russia. She controls the power of wind. Janice Kawai, I hope I pronounced that surname correctly, she voices Guy. They had her billed as from Asia, but they don't specify which country exactly. One of the creators from the show, Barbara Pyle, said that the character was based on a Malaysian activist and was meant to represent all of East and South Asians. Guy controlled the power of water. Scott Menville was the voice of Marty, the heart and soul and the calmest member of the group. He had the power of heart and was raised by the tribe's shaman. He was first billed as being from South America, and then later it was depicted that he was from Brazil. Whoopi Goldberg was the voice of Gaia. Whoopi Goldberg did the voice for the first 3 seasons of the show, and then for the last 3 seasons of the show, late Lois Lane Superman actress Margaret Kidder took over the role. Cap and the Planeteers had a decent-sized rogues gallery, including Ed Asner's pig-faced villain Hoggish Greedley, John Ratzenberger, who voiced Greedley's sidekick Rigger. Venomous Scum is a humanoid rat creature who was first voiced by Jeff Goldblum in Season 1, and then legendary voice actor Maurice LaMarche for the remainder of the show's run. Duke Nukem, no, not the video game character, is a doctor who transformed himself into a radioactive rock-skinned mutant. He is voiced by Dean Stockwell of Quantum Leap fame in the first 3 seasons of the show. Maurice LaMarche returns again and voices Nukem for the rest of the show's run. Mad scientist Dr. Barbara Blight is first voiced by Meg Ryan, and then late voiceover actress Mary Kay Berman. Mal is Dr. Blight's AI henchman, and he is voiced by late English actor David Rappaport, and then later on by English actor and legend Tim Curry. Other notable names who voiced other villains on the show included Martin Sheen, Sting the singer, the late David Warner, Malcolm McDowell, and the voiceover god himself Frank Welker. The show's legacy is one of trying to make young people aware of the environment and the dangers of pollution. The little morality planet alert messages at the end of each episode educated viewers on how to treat the environment cleanly without it being too preachy. It was a show for its time, and with its rather catchy intro theme, it was one of the standout animated shows of 1990. Gravedale High. Rick Moranis of Ghostbusters fame stars as teacher Max Schneider, who has unwittingly taken a job at Gravedale High School, a school for monsters near the city of Midtown. Schneider is the only human in the school, and he is in charge of a group of ghoulish teenagers that are the latest generation versions of classic movie monsters. The students are loud, noisy, and wacky, with no monster teacher actually interested in the job, so that's where Max comes in. The actual town of Gravedale is occasionally seen and consists primarily of various cemeteries, including the East Side Cemetery and the Midtown Mausoleum. The main characters of the show included Vinny the Stoker, a hybrid of Fonz from Happy Days and Dracula, the cool one of the group and loosely based on Bram Stoker's Dracula. Frankentyke, voiced by the voice god Frank Welker, a child reminiscent of both Frankenstein's monster and Bart Simpson. Reggie Monsrud, who is voiced by TMNT Donatello actor Barry Gordon. He is a geeky haired werewolf. And that's about it. J.P. Gasly III, voiced once again by Frank Welker, who is impersonating Peter Law. He is a wealthy blue-skinned gnome-like monster. Gil Waterman, voiced by Jackie Earl Haley, a lagoon creature and surfer dude. Cleopatra, voiced by legendary talk show host Ricky Lake, a nerdy mummy creature with a bit of weight on her. Sid, the class clown and impressionist, who is based on the Invisible Man, voiced by Maurice LaMarche. Blanche, voiced by Shari Belafonte, a zombie Creole Southern belle who is a real shopaholic, a literal mall zombie. Doozer, voiced by Kimmy Robertson, a snakehead Gorgon Valley girl and a parody and namesake of Medusa. The 3 snakes on her head have their own separate personality, often played up for goofy capers. The show was very short-lived, as it seemed to be the case with a lot of these shows coming out in the 90s, and lasted only 13 episodes during a solitary single-season run. Now, I remember 2 episodes from this series. The first one was the Dress Up Mess Up, where Doozer has persuaded Cleo to lend her money to buy an expensive dress to win a fashion show, return the dress and get the money back. Things go awry when the dress ends up getting ruined due to the snakes on Doozer's head being petrified of a mongoose and dragging Doozer around the floor. Just for context, earlier in the episode during class, Max teaches the kids about a mongoose that controls the population of poison snakes, hence the reason the snakes are afraid. Doozer ends up working at a burger joint Snaky Pete's to pay the money back. I watched it several times, which is why it's the only real episode I can remember. The other episode was He Ain't Scary, He's My Brother. Frankie's older brother Big Frank visits Gravedale High to spend some time with him. Unfortunately for Frankie, Frank spends more time with the girls Cleo, Doozer and Blanche, and this cuts into their brotherly hangouts, causing Frankie to feel jealous and left out. Eventually, Frank is there for his little brother when he saves him and Max from a group of human thugs. This one I saw on TV during reruns in the mid-90s, and given that Big Frank was something of a ladies' man, that's kind of one of the reasons why it sticks out to me. These two episodes aside, I don't really remember a great deal more about this show. I have seen the entire run loaded on YouTube, and some of it I did use for this feature. I may one day do a full feature on the whole series. Now Rick Moranis, the theme song, and some of the characters have been etched in my memory, which is why I remember this show. It certainly had its own uniqueness, and whilst one of the more obscure animated shows of the 90s, it certainly stood out in its own right. Kid and Play. Kid and Play were amongst the biggest names in hip-hop with their catchy, free-flowing, non-gangster style of rap. They had expanded their horizons into the world of film with their very successful classic comedy House Party earlier in the year. Their next port of call was on the small screen in the world of animation, making their debut in their self-entitled cartoon show. The show was more a kid-friendly version of what we saw in the movies with Kid and Play, trying to make it as hip-hop stars whilst navigating their way through high school. Kid was the straight-A student, always playing things the safe and easy way, whilst Play was a troublemaker, always plotting get-rich-quick schemes, whilst also being the manager of the group. Now, unlike the movie, they did have an entourage here on the show. The dance trio called Non-Stop, comprising of Play's sister Layla and her two friends Marika and Downtown. Kid and Play's posse included DJ Wiz, producer Herbie, and Jazzy. There was also the wise old jazz player, Blue, always on hand to give the guys and the girls any old advice. They also had their enemies in the form of Acorn the Mean Machine and his posse of Bebe and Pitbull. During most of the show's run, the rap duo's real-life songs were played when the duo were performing in clubs or for their school. The animation was a bit wobbly and quite comical at times. The show itself was sandwiched in between two live segments involving the real-life duo talking about real-life lessons and positivity, further adding to the rap duo's positive kid-friendly image. Once again, just like every other 90s show, this lasted only one season of just 13 episodes. It was created by Cynthia Friedlob and John Semper Jr. John Semper Jr. would later go on to become the head writer for Spider-Man the Animated Series. The voices behind the characters included some well-known established names in the entertainment biz, including future bad boy Martin Lawrence, who voiced DJ Wiz and Herbie. Don Lewis of A Different World was the voice of Layla. Voice of a legend Cree Summer, also one of the stars of A Different World, was Marika and Downtown. Doreen Harewood was Old Blue. Now, whilst the movie was largely aimed at a more mature audience comprised of teens and young adults, the cartoon was the opposite, clearly aimed at a child audience with all its slapstick humor and wit. It fell into that category of music stars that were popular at the time and had animated shows that were made about them. New Kids on the Block with their animated series and MC Hammer with Hammerman also come to mind. In the grand scheme of things, this is not the biggest high point of the career of Kid and Play, but a small piece of their success from the early 90s. New Kids on the Block. From one famous music act to the next. New Kids on the Block were one of the biggest music acts in the world at this point in time, and they were everywhere, with their music videos and merchandise and their sold-out tours. And now they extended their brand into the world of animation with their self-entitled animated series. The series focused on the group's misadventures with their manager, based on their real-life manager, Maurice Starr. The group traveled the world to perform concerts to their fans, but kept stumbling into various situations that led to a side adventure. This would usually end up with the group being taught a moral lesson and the episode wrapping up with a pro-social message, very similar to Kid and Play. Much like that show, the group would appear in live segments sandwiched in between the actual episode. Now, prior to making this video, other than a few glimpses, I had never watched a single episode of the show. I was into some of these songs, but the animated show just never really registered on my radar. Looking at it retrospectively, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the show Denver the Last Dinosaur and the Kid and Play show. It would have been a show that I would have watched back in the day, but not really had a lot of nostalgic feelings for it, as it wasn't really a standout animated show. New Kids on the Block, the animated series, was another animated show from this time period that lasted a single solitary season, only running for 15 episodes. Again, like the Kid and Play show, the voiceover cast did not involve the actual group themselves, but more established voiceover veterans in the industry, including Lauren Lester, who would go on to become Robin in Batman the Animated Series, Scott Menville, and Josh Keaton. Other voiceover stars included Jennifer Darling, Rob Paulson, another industry legend, Michael Winslow of Police Academy, and Chris Summer, another legend in the business, to name but a few. This was just another typical 90s Saturday morning cartoon show that will not go down in the annals of great animated shows, but a show that capitalized off the success of a very popular music act of the time.
Was the year 1990.